My name is Riya, and this being my wedding night, I ran. Silk tore beneath my feet as I bolted through the estate corridors. My lungs burned, and the gold bangles on my wrists continued to clash loudly. Don't let her out of this estate. Their furious voices echoed behind me. Oh. But I didn't look back. I turned a corner, stumbled into darkness, and suddenly, a strong and unyielding hand shot out, looping an arm around my waist and yanking me flush against a hard chest, forcing the death of my scream in my throat. His hot and steady breath brushed my ear. Dark cologne filled my lungs, and for one terrifying second, I didn't know if I wanted to slap him or thank him. Then he whispered my name, Riya. And that's when I realized the man hiding me, it was none other than Mateo, the one person who had ever made me feel human. I didn't even know when it happened. Mateo wasn't supposed to matter. He was just a name on contracts and a silent presence beside my fiancé during business dinners. A partner, nothing more. That was how I met him months ago, across polished tables and forced smiles. And somehow, in the spaces where my future husband never bothered to look at me, Mateo did. He listened and he noticed. And while the man I was promised to treated me like a signed agreement, Mateo made me feel like a choice. So yes, I ran. Because once I became that man's wife, things wouldn't just get complicated. They'd become permanent. And I refused to belong to someone who never wanted to know me. His low and careful whisper slid through the dimness, faintly pressing his chest against my back, and beneath that calm exterior, I felt it. His fast and almost frantic heartbeat betraying him. My own pulse also tried to keep up, thundering in a rhythm I didn't want to understand. He lifted his head just enough for our eyes to meet. Let's get out of this place. The words cut sharper than I expected, and his voice dropped lower, brushing a rough exhale against my cheek. So just stay with... A violent bang shattered the silence. The air jumped and the walls trembled. We snapped toward the door as another crash followed, louder, angrier, metal striking wood. Then low and harsh voices, bleeding through the cracks. They were close, and without thinking, I shoved him. I instinctively slammed my palms into his chest as I stumbled back, hitting the cold wall, feeling the impact of a wild pulse through my ribs. Mateo cursed under his breath, straightening instantly, tightening every muscle in his arms as the pounding grew more violent while stretching his tall shadow across the floor. Then a clear and confident voice. Yes, sir, we've searched the entire estate. We're very sure she never left. A pause. That said, there's a high chance she's hiding here, sir. The sound of my fiancé's men. That voice slithered through the cracks, followed by the scrape of boots across the floorboards. My breath hitched and my chest tightened beneath my palms. I'd run with everything I had, and somehow, I was still in my fiancé's estate. Perfect. Just perfect. I rolled my eyes under my breath, forcing the panic back down. They were close. Far too close. Mateo turned from the door. The overhead bulb flickered once, cutting his face in half, light and shadow, still keeping that expression of his as unreadable as ever. He glanced at me, clearly about to say something, but I didn't let him. I lifted my hand and swung, aiming for his face. But he caught my wrist midair, locking his fingers around it effortlessly as my gasp bounced off the walls. You're a jerk, Mateo? You know that? Without blinking, he loosened his grip, brushing his thumb against my wrist before he let go. How? My voice shook, tangling anger and disbelief together. How can you promise to help me run away from my husband's house and not even show up when we planned? I gestured sharply at the dusty walls and flickering bulb. This? Mateo exhaled slowly. I told you, Riya. If you're going to make a promise, I cut him off, folding my arms. At least try to keep it. I scoffed. You don't even look like you know what you're doing. That's when he snapped. His hands shot out, gripping my shoulders as he spun me back to face him, forcing out rushed air from my lungs. My breath got caught, his brows knit together, and that calm mask finally began to crack. "We can sort out your anger issues later," he muttered, lowering his voice. "Issues?" I started. But before I could even say much, he firmly pressed his palm over my lips. My eyes widened, and the roughness of his hand contrasted with the restraint in his touch as his gaze locked onto mine. Then I heard it. Fast, heavy, footsteps, closing in. The door rattled violently, the bolts groaned under the strain, and Mateo's eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. I wish I could say I made the right decision, but if I had, this story wouldn't exist. Without a word, he turned and moved to the opposite side of the room, unlocking the wide window with a soft metallic click. The night wind whooshed in immediately, slicing through the stale air, brushing past my skin as I felt the cold. He leaned close behind me with a steady breath despite the noises outside. "Once you're out," he whispered just above my shoulder, "I need you to run. Run as fast as you can and head toward the end of the estate's private parking lot. Behind the large truck, you'll find what you need to get out of here." "What are you talking?" "Just shut up and do as I say, Riya." His voice snapped louder now, as frustration and something else broke through that polished calm. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." "But where will I—" "No buts." He cut me off. Before I could argue again, his hands were already at my waist, and in one swift motion, he lifted me up through the window frame with an almost effortless and careless strength. My breath hitched as his fingers brushed against my side before pushing me forward. "Go," he whispered again, this time quieter. The window slammed shut behind me before I could reply. For a heartbeat, I just stood there, frozen in the cold night air, staring back at the faint outline of his shadow behind the glass. Then, crash. The sound of fists meeting flesh, furniture toppling, a grunt, a curse. I flinched. The noise was brutal and raw, along with the unmistakable rhythm of violence. My heels scraped against the gravel as I stumbled backward, and my heart continued to hammer so hard it blurred my thoughts. The sounds from inside grew louder. Another crash, a choked cry, the shattering of glass. The night wind howled through the broken stillness, carrying his voice as Mateo's words replayed in my head, over and over. "I can't let you leave just yet, Riya." But now he was the one keeping them from reaching me. And somehow that terrified me more than the men chasing me. Security shouted, and glasses tinkled. I took a deep breath, bolted through, burst across the courtyard and into the garden with burning lungs, hearing a drumbeat from my heart so loud it drowned the chaos. I hugged the trunk of a broad ornamental tree and slid to a crouch behind its stone planter. My hands shook as I scanned the darkness for the parking lot, for any sign of escape. But sharp footsteps, two at a time, cut across the gravel behind me as a cold beam of light swung across the green trees that lined up above me, with the clipped voices moving closer. I pressed my back harder against the stone, trying to steady my shallow breath. I shoved one of the gravel stone beside my feet into my hand and flung it hard across the opposite side of the lot so it would hit metal and sing, causing the sound to slice through the night and draw the men's attention. And without looking back, followed the light that led towards the lot. My feet went numb to the cool cobbles, but I kept on moving faster than fear would let me think. The hidden route spat me out at the private parking lot with rows of hulking machines lined up, and yes, they even had a private patch for cars that smelled faintly of oil and leather. I kept low, whispering past a massive monster truck until a motorcycle in the corner caught my eye, and beside the front tire, half hidden in shadow, lay a dark briefcase. This wasn't the time to hesitate, so I dropped to my knees, slid the case flat, and popped the latches. Carefully arranged inside were a compact stun gun with a buzzy edge, a pepper spray canister, a heavy LED baton, a tactical flashlight that smelled faintly of ozone, and a handful of other things that blinked and clicked in ways I didn't need to name to know they were useful. I swallowed, seeing as my heart kept on beating faster. I wanted to snatch a glance at all the strange gadgets scattered before me as a dozen odd contraptions stared back, begging to be figured out. If If I had even a minute, maybe I could have made sense of their purposes. But the voices frantically searching for me were closing in, pounding louder against the ground. Wait a second. Is that a utility belt? I froze, blinking at it, raising a brow. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered under my breath. A sharp and quick laugh bubbled out of me. Not exactly the best timing, but wow, it was either that or cry. I slid the belt through my fingers. The leather felt smooth but sturdy, dotted with little compartments. Good thing I'm a fan of Batman, I whispered, snorting quietly. I grinned wider than I should have in a situation where my life was hanging by a thread. The belt sat perfectly around my waist, snug above my dark blouse, and every pocket in that thing seemed made for the random junk that had been waiting inside the box. And for the briefest, most idiotic moment, I forgot I was being hunted. Hey, Bambolina! The shout suddenly cracked the air. I flinched, and that made my smile flatten in an instant. The voice was deep, sharp, and much too familiar. Kelvin! It rolled through the night from behind the hulking silhouette of the truck that hid me. I know you're here somewhere, Bambolina, he bellowed as each word kept on ricocheting closer. You've ruined this night, and you won't like what I have in mind for you. And your incompetent father. My chest tightened. And if you value your life, as well as his, you'll obediently walk up to me this minute to make things right. His pitch dipped now. I'm sure you know what my father and his boss, the Don, are capable of. Yeah, sure. Kelvin and his big, scary syndicate father. Always wagging his tail under orders, too cowardly to lift a finger without the Don. The phantom no one ever saw pulling his strings. My lips twisted into a grimace. Pathetic, I muttered, though I kept it under my breath. I scanned my surroundings desperately. There had to be somewhere. Some way out. My legs trembled as I rose slowly from my crouch. Clank. The small bit of metallic sound shot through the night. But in the silence between Kelvin's taunts, its sound was just as loud as a gunshot. I froze. Ah, there you are, Bambolina. His voice sharpened with delight. Damn it. Of course he heard. I crouched fast, around a racing heart, and scrambled for the thing that had betrayed me, and my fingers closed around cool metal. A key. A motorbike key. I blinked. Attached to it was a scrap of yellow paper dangling, and there was a note. The handwriting looked sloppy and hurried, but it was definitely an address. My eyes squinted in the dark as I smudged out the barely legible words. None of it made sense until my gaze caught the last line. City of Umpang. Mateo. He wanted me to meet him there. My pulse quickened for a different reason. But I didn't have the luxury of decoding messages right now because Kelvin's boots were pounding closer. I clutched the key tighter as panic crawled up my spine and looked at the black, sleek, and dangerous bike before me. I've never actually ridden a bike before. Not really, unless, of course, you count hours wasted on my old motorcycle racing simulator. But this was the real thing. And right now, my sweaty palms and pounding heartbeat were making damn sure I remembered that. Still, what choice did I have? I swung a leg over the dark beast, feeling the cold from its leather seat beneath me. My fingers trembled as I yanked the helmet down over my head, sliding the visor shut with a sharp click that muffled the chaos around me. I slid the key in, twisted it, and pressed the ignition. The bike growled awake with a savage hiss, as the engine coughed once, roaring low and guttural. The vibrations climbed up through the frame and into my legs, humming through me, shaking my bones. And then, his voice. Where do you think you're going? Kelvin stepped out, blocking the only clear path. In his hand, a long steel rod glinted under the dim streetlight, slicing through the smoke-flecked air as he swung it lazily from side to side. Get off that bike while I'm still nicely asking, Bambolina. His voice was deep and menacing, with that thin veneer of fake politeness that made my skin crawl. He lowered himself into a stance, angling the rod upward, now bracing it with both hands.